My name is Frank Miller. I am 76 years old, and my own son left me on the street the moment I got discharged from the hospital. Yes, you heard me right. My own flesh and blood, the boy I raised, betrayed me when I was at my most vulnerable. But let me tell you this from the beginning, because this story needs to be heard. It was February when it all started. The damp Florida chill got into my lungs like a curse. First, it was a simple cough, the kind you ignore thinking it will go away on its own. But it didn't go away. It stayed there, growing, gathering strength day after day. One morning I woke up unable to breathe, as if someone had pressed a pillow over my face all night. Mrs. Higgins, my neighbor of a lifetime, was the one who found me lying on the patio. I had gone out to water my geraniums and couldn't even make it to the hose. "Oh, Mr. Miller," she screamed, and after that, I don't remember much else until I woke up at St. Joseph's Hospital, hooked up to more wires than a telephone pole. Dr. Evans, a young woman with serious eyes, explained to my son Rick that I had severe pneumonia. "Your father is in very serious condition," she told him. "His age doesn't help, and his lungs are very compromised. We must prepare for anything." I listened to her from my bed, floating between sleep and wakefulness due to the medication, but I heard every word. Rick was standing next to my bed with that face he makes when something makes him uncomfortable. He was always like that, ever since he was a kid. When there were difficult decisions to make, when problems had to be faced, he would put on that same expression, as if the world owed him something better. Next to him was Lisa, his wife, a woman who never looked at me with true affection. Since they got married, 10 years ago now, I always felt she viewed my house, my small estate, as something that would one day be hers. "He doesn't look good," Lisa muttered, but she wasn't looking at me. She was looking out the window toward the street as if she were already calculating something. "The doctors said he could last weeks like this, right?" Rick nodded without looking at me. My own son, the one I taught to ride a bike in the driveway of the house on Maple Drive, the one I carried on my shoulders to the county fair, couldn't even look me in the eye while I fought for every breath. The days became a confused mix of nurses, medicines, and that constant beeping of the machines keeping me alive. Rick came to visit me every 2 days, always in a rush, always with that same uncomfortable face. Lisa accompanied him sometimes, but she stayed in the hallway, talking on the phone or checking her cell. One afternoon, when they thought I was asleep from the sedatives, I heard them in the corridor. Their voices reached my bed like whispers cutting through the air. "He can't go on like this," Lisa was saying. "We've been paying rent for 3 weeks on that horrible apartment downtown, and your dad's house is right there, empty, in a prime location." "It's his house, Lisa," Rick replied, but his voice sounded tired without conviction. "His house that's going to be yours when he... well, you know. The doctors don't give much hope. Why wait? We could save all that rent money." There was a long silence. I kept pretending to sleep, but my heart raced so fast I feared the machines would start sounding alarms. It is a cold, hard thing to realize you are worth more dead than alive to the people you love. I was listening to my daughter-in-law plan my funeral while I was still breathing. "I don't know, Lisa. It feels wrong," Rick muttered. "Wrong? What's wrong about it? He's not getting out of here. The doctors were clear, and we are throwing money in the trash every month. Think about it, honey. It's a beautiful house in the best zone of Clearwater with a big yard close to everything, and we're squeezed into those 500 square feet that smell like mildew." Another pause. I could imagine my son running his hand through his hair, that gesture he'd made since childhood when something made him nervous. "What if he recovers?" he asked finally. "Look around, Rick. Do you see anyone his age walking out of here? He's 76, severe pneumonia, and he's been hooked to machines for 3 weeks. Don't be naive." Those words hit me like stones in the stomach. My own family was counting the days to my death, planning how to divide what little I had built in my entire life. We could change the locks, Lisa continued. Say it's for security, that with the house empty it's better. And while we're at it, we move some things. After all, when he comes back, if he comes back, he won't need so much stuff. I don't know if that's right, Rick murmured, but it no longer sounded like a refusal. It sounded like someone convincing himself. It's right because it's practical, Lisa insisted, and because that house is going to be yours anyway. We're just speeding up the inevitable. I heard them walk away down the hall, their steps echoing on the hospital tile floor. I stayed there, connected to those machines, feeling how every breath hurt not just in my lungs, but in my soul. That night I couldn't sleep, not because of the sickness, but because of what I had heard. I thought about all the years I had worked to buy that house on Maple Drive. I remembered when Rick was little and ran through the yard chasing butterflies. I remembered the afternoons I spent teaching him to change a light bulb, to fix a faucet, to be a responsible man. Where had I failed as a father? At what moment did my son learn to see me as an obstacle instead of his blood? During the following days, Rick kept coming, but he was no longer the same. He avoided my gaze, spoke little, was always in a rush to leave. Lisa stopped accompanying him. When I asked about her, he told me she was busy with house things. Which house? I wanted to ask him, but something inside me already knew the answer. One afternoon, Mrs. Higgins came to visit me. She arrived with a bag of peaches from her tree and those worried eyes I had known all my life. "Mr. Miller," she said to me after the usual greetings, "I wanted to ask you something, but I don't know if it's right." "Tell me, Mrs. Higgins. You know you can ask me anything." "It's about your house. I've seen Rick and Lisa taking things out, bringing others in. I thought maybe you would ask them to fix something up, but I don't know. It looks strange." My heart stopped for a moment, not from the illness, but from the confirmation of what I already knew. "What kind of things have they been taking out?" I asked her, trying to keep my voice calm. "Well, your wardrobe, Mr. Miller, your books, those photographs you had in the living room. I saw them put it all in the garage. And then they brought their refrigerator, their sofa, as if they were moving in." Mrs. Higgins looked at me with those eyes full of compassion, which hurt more than the truth itself. "I thought maybe you had told them to stay and watch the house while you're here," she continued. "But something doesn't add up. Why change the locks if they're only watching it?" The locks. There it was. My son had changed the locks on my own house while I fought for my life in a hospital bed. "Mr. Miller, are you okay? You look very pale." "I'm fine, Mrs. Higgins, just tired." But I wasn't fine. I was feeling something break inside me that had nothing to do with my lungs. It was something deeper, more painful than any disease. That night, when the nurses thought I was sleeping, I cried. I didn't cry for the pneumonia or the fear of dying. I cried for my son, for the man he had become, for the family I thought I had, which turned out to be an illusion. But also, somewhere inside me, something different began to grow. A determination I hadn't felt in years. A strength that came not from the machines surrounding me, but from rage and wounded dignity. If my son thought he had already buried me, if he believed he could dispose of my life and my things as if I were just a nuisance he waited to disappear, then he had a surprise waiting for him. Because Frank Miller hadn't reached 76 years to let himself be buried alive by anyone, not even his own son. The day I was discharged arrived like a miracle I didn't expect myself. Dr. Evans looked at me with those eyes that have seen too many things and told me I was a lucky man. "Mr. Miller, you have defied all our expectations. Your lungs responded better than we imagined. Are you stronger than you look?" Strong. That word sounded strange to me after 3 weeks hooked to machines, after having heard my own family planning my funeral while I breathed. But there I was, sitting on that hospital bed, holding my discharge papers with trembling hands, feeling I had won the first battle of a war that was just beginning. Nurse Rose, a kind woman who had cared for me all those weeks, helped me dress in the same clothes I had arrived in. The shirt was big on me now. I had lost weight, but I managed to look dignified. "Is your family coming for you, Mr. Miller?" she asked me while checking I had all my medications. "No," I told her. "I will call a taxi." I didn't tell her I hadn't called Rick to let him know I was being discharged. I didn't tell her I wanted to see with my own eyes what they had done with my house, my life, my trust. Some truths must be seen without anyone preparing them for you. The taxi was a beat-up Crown Vic that had seen better days, just like me. The driver, a young man with a buck's cap, helped me load my small bag with the medicines. "Where to, boss?" 247 Maple Drive, I told him, and those words came out with a bitter taste. My own address now sounded like a stranger's. During the ride through the streets of Clearwater, everything seemed different. Or was it me who had changed? The houses, the palm trees, even the sky looked different after being so close to never seeing them again. I thought about Mrs. Higgins' peaches, about my geraniums in the yard, about my armchair where I read the paper every morning. Little things that make up a life and that you only value when they are about to be taken from you. The taxi stopped in front of number 247, my house. The house I bought with the money I earned working at the shipyards for 20 years, hauling cargo under the relentless Florida sun. The house where Rick was born, where he took his first steps, where his mother Martha died 15 years ago in that very living room that now, well, we would see what had happened to that living room. I paid the driver and stood on the sidewalk, looking at my own home as if it were the first time. Everything looked the same from the outside. The yellow siding Martha had chosen, the black railings I painted last year, the small garden where Mrs. Higgins sometimes came to chat in the afternoons. But something felt different. Like when you know someone has been in your house, even if you can't say exactly what has changed. I took my keys out of my pocket, the same keys I had carried for 30 years, worn by use, with that metal ring Rick gave me when he turned 15. I went up the 3 steps of the porch, those steps I had repaired so many times, and put the key in the lock. It didn't go in. I tried again. Nothing. The key that had opened that door thousands of times was now useless. I tried with the back door key, thinking maybe I had gotten confused by the medication. Neither. That was when I fully understood what had happened. I didn't just understand it with my head, but I felt it in my whole body, like a blow that knocks the wind out of you. There is a specific kind of coldness that washes over you when your own home rejects you. My son had changed the locks on my house while I was dying in the hospital. I knocked on the door, first softly, then harder. I heard footsteps inside, footsteps I knew but that now sounded different, as if they were the steps of an owner in her own house. The door opened and Lisa appeared. She was in a robe, a blue silk robe I had never seen on her before, with her hair up as if she had just gotten out of bed. But what impacted me most wasn't her clothes, but her face. The expression of someone who is in her territory, comfortable, relaxed. The expression of someone not expecting visitors. "Mr. Miller!" she exclaimed. But it wasn't an exclamation of joy. It was of surprise, and not exactly pleasant. "What a surprise! How are you? We thought you weren't going to—" Well, that maybe I wouldn't leave the hospital. There it was, the direct confirmation, without beating around the bush, of what I had heard in those whispers in the hallway. My daughter-in-law just told me to my face that they had taken for granted I would die. Well, here I am, I told her, holding up my hospital papers. Could you call Rick? I want to come into my house. Lisa didn't move from the door. She stayed there, blocking the entrance like a guard, and I could see behind her my living room. Or what had been my living room. Now there was furniture I didn't recognize, a new TV, different curtains. My house had been transformed into something else. Rick! She yelled toward the inside without taking her eyes off me. Come here, please! My son appeared at the Miller. We brought our things, arranged everything. The house is now, well, it's occupied. Occupied? I asked. By whom? By us, Rick replied, and for the first time he looked me directly in the eyes. The house is ours now, Dad. You don't need it anymore. Those words fell on me as if they had thrown ice water over me. My own son, standing in the doorway of my house, was telling me I didn't need it anymore, as if I were an object that had lost its utility. I don't need it, I repeated slowly. Rick, this is my house. I bought it. I paid for it. Here is your birth certificate. Here your mother died. What do you mean I don't need it? Dad, don't get upset, he told me, but his voice sounded nervous now. We are going to help you. We know a very good place, very comfortable. It's called Sunny Meadows. It's a home for seniors. You'll be well taken care of there. You'll have company, nurses. A nursing home, I said. It's not a nursing home, Dad. It's a residence, very nice, with gardens, activities. A nursing home, I repeated. You want to put me in a nursing home? Lisa crossed her arms and sighed as if I were a capricious child who doesn't understand reason. Mr. Miller, be realistic. You just got out of a very serious pneumonia. You need special care. We work. We can't be looking after you all the time. And this house is too big for one person. It was too big for one person when you lived in your apartment and I lived here alone, I answered her. But then you didn't care? That was different, Rick muttered. Different how? Well, you were fine. Now you're sick, you're older. You need care. What I need is to enter my house, I told him, and my voice started to rise in volume. What I need is for you to explain why you changed the locks on my house without asking me. Rick ran his hand through his hair, that nervous gesture of always. Dad, calm down, the neighbors are watching. He was right. Mrs. Higgins was in her window. Mr. Roberts had come out to the yard next door. Mrs. Davis was sweeping her sidewalk, but without taking her eyes off us. The whole neighborhood was witnessing how my own son denied me entry to my house. Let them watch, I told him. Let everyone see how Frank Miller's son treats his father. Don't be dramatic, Lisa intervened. Nobody is treating you badly. We are offering you a solution. A solution? Taking my house away is a solution. We aren't taking it away, Rick shouted. We are going to inherit it anyway when you die. We are just speeding up the process. There it was, the raw and naked truth. My son had just told me he considered me practically dead and was only claiming his early inheritance. I stood there on the porch of my own house, holding my bag with one hand and the hospital papers with the other, looking at my son and my daughter-in-law as if they were two strangers, because that's what they were, two strangers who had used my illness to steal my home. Mrs. Higgins approached from her house. Mr. Miller, is everything okay? No, Mrs. Higgins, I replied without taking my eyes off Rick. Everything is not okay. Do you need anything? Do you want to come into my house? That offer, coming from a neighbor while my own son slammed the door in my face, broke my heart. Thank you, Mrs. Higgins. Maybe in a while. Lisa sighed with impatience. Mr. Miller, don't make a scene. Neighbors don't need to get involved in family matters. Family matters? I repeated. Lisa, your husband just told me this house is no longer mine, to go to a nursing home because he already moved here. Is that a family matter? It's a practical decision, she insisted. It's theft, I told her. Rick took a step forward as if he were going to leave the porch, but he didn't. Dad, we aren't going to discuss this in the street. If you want, let's talk inside. But you have to understand that things have changed. Inside? 5 minutes ago you told me it wasn't my house anymore. It's complicated. No, Rick, it's not complicated. Either it's my house or it isn't. Either I am your father or I am not. What is it going to be? He remained silent. Lisa took him by the arm and pulled him inside. Come on, honey, there's nothing to discuss. Mr. Miller, we will help you with Sunny Meadows. We can even pay the first months until you get used to it. And they closed the door. They closed the door of my house in my face. I stood there, on my own porch, with the whole street watching me, feeling the world crashing down on me. But not in the way it had crashed in the hospital when I fought to breathe. This time it crashed in a different way. Deeper. More painful. Because it's one thing to get sick, and quite another to discover that the people you love most in the world see you as a nuisance that must be cleared from the path. But Frank Miller hadn't gotten up from a hospital bed to let himself be defeated at the door of his own house. If my son wanted to play dirty, he was going to learn his old man still had some cards to play. That night I stayed at Mrs. Higgins' house. She made me chamomile tea and let me sleep in her son's room, who had gone to work in Atlanta. But I couldn't sleep. I stayed awake all night, staring at the ceiling, thinking about what had happened, feeling the rage and sadness churning in my chest like a caged animal. It keeps you up, the silence of betrayal. It's louder than any shouting match. At dawn, Mrs. Higgins made me scrambled eggs and bacon and fresh coffee, as if I were family. I sat at her table eating from the plate she had served me, and for the first time in a long time, I felt grateful for the kindness of strangers when your own blood fails you. Mr. Miller, she told me while pouring more coffee, I don't meddle in business that doesn't concern me, but what they did yesterday isn't right. You don't do that to even your worst enemy, much less to one's father. Mrs. Higgins, do you think I have any legal right? I mean, it's my house. I have the deeds, but they already changed the locks. They already moved in. Of course you have rights, she replied with that certainty years give you. My cousin had a similar problem with a son who wanted to keep his land. He had to go with a lawyer, but in the end he recovered what was his. That word, lawyer, resonated in my head. I didn't have much money. The pension barely covered medicines and food, but I had to try. I couldn't stand with my arms crossed watching my son get away with it. Do you know any lawyer who doesn't charge too much? I asked her. Mrs. Higgins stood thinking a moment, tapping her fingers on the table. Look, Mr. Miller, do you remember David, your sister Martha's son? Of course I remembered. David, my nephew. The skinny kid who came to my house on vacations and always walked around with books under his arm. He had studied law at the University of Florida. He had graduated a few years ago. The last time I had seen him was at his mother's funeral, my sister, 3 years ago. David is a lawyer, continued Mrs. Higgins, and he is family. Maybe he can help you. She was right. David was family, and if there was someone who could understand the gravity of what Rick had done, it was him. The Millers had always been a united family, until now. After breakfast, Mrs. Higgins lent me her phone to call David. I found him at his office downtown. Uncle Frank! He greeted me with that cheerful voice I remembered since he was a child. How are you? It's been so long since we talked. David, I need to see you. It's urgent. His tone changed immediately. What happened, Uncle? Are you okay? No, David, I'm not okay. Can you come see me? I'm at Mrs. Higgins' house on Maple Drive. That Mrs. Higgins' house? Why aren't you in your house? That is the reason I need to see you. An hour later, David was sitting in Mrs. Higgins' living room, listening to my story with an expression that went from surprise to anger and then to professional indignation. He was a 35-year-old man, serious, with glasses that gave him an intellectual look, but who had inherited the strong character of the Millers. When I finished telling him everything, he remained silent for a long moment, tapping a pen on his notepad. "Uncle," he told me finally, "this is extremely serious. What Rick did isn't only morally wrong, it's legally wrong. It's criminal trespass. It's elder abuse. It's financial exploitation. It's many things that can get him into serious trouble. Do you think I can get my house back? Not only will you get it back, Uncle, Rick is going to have to answer for what he did. Do you have the deeds to the house? They are in my safe inside the house, but I have copies at the bank. Perfect. Witnesses that you lived there until you got sick? All the neighbors, Mrs. Higgins, Mr. Roberts, Mrs. Davis, the whole neighborhood knows me." David wrote everything in his notebook, with that concentration lawyers put on when they find a case they can win. "Uncle, I'm going to be honest with you. This is going to cost money. The paperwork, the copies, the court fees. We are talking about maybe $300 for filing fees." $300. It was a chunk of my monthly pension, but it was worth it. I couldn't allow Rick to get away with it. "David, do you think we have a chance to win?" "Uncle, we don't have a chance. We are going to win. What Rick did is so brazen, so obvious that any judge is going to rule in your favor. The problem isn't winning. The problem is how hard Rick is going to fall." Those words gave me a strength I hadn't felt since I left the hospital. Finally, someone was telling me I was right, that what they had done to me wasn't just unfair morally, but also illegally. "When can we start?" "Right now. Let's go to the bank for the copies of the deeds, then to vital records for your birth certificate and Rick's, and tomorrow we file the lawsuit." The following days were a whirlwind of papers, procedures, and statements. David worked as if it were his own case, with a dedication that reminded me why I had always been proud of that boy. We went with Mrs. Higgins so she could testify as a witness. The poor woman was nervous. She had never been in a court. But when the clerk asked her if Mr. Frank Miller lived in the house at 247 Maple Drive, she answered with a firmness that filled me with pride. "Of course he lived there. I've been his neighbor for 30 years. That is his house. He bought it with his work. His son was born there. His wife died there. And what they did to him is a shame." Mr. Roberts also testified, and Mrs. Davis, and even the guy from the corner store who knew me for decades. Everyone told the same story. Mr. Frank Miller was the legitimate owner of that house. He had lived there all his life, and what Rick and Lisa had done was abuse. David filed the lawsuit for criminal trespass, eviction, and emotional distress. In the filing, he explained how Rick had taken advantage of his father being in critical condition in the hospital to change the locks and move in with his wife, denying him entry afterwards to his own house. "Uncle," he told me when we left the courthouse after filing the suit, "now we have to wait. But I assure you that in 2 weeks maximum, we have an answer." We didn't have to wait 2 weeks. 1 week later, David called me early in the morning. "Uncle, we have a hearing tomorrow at 10. Judge Harrison wants to see the case personally." Judge Harrison was known in the county for being strict but fair, an older man, gray-haired, who didn't tolerate disrespect and who had a reputation for protecting seniors from family abuse. The morning of the hearing, I put on my best suit, the same one I had worn for Martha's funeral. David picked me up early and we went to the courthouse together. On the way, he explained how the process would be. Uncle, the judge is going to listen to both versions. We are going to present our evidence. Rick is going to present his, if he has any, and then the judge decides. And if Rick doesn't show up, better for us. That would be admitting his guilt. We arrived at the courthouse, and there they were. Rick in a cheap suit that looked uncomfortable, and Lisa dressed as if she were going to a wedding with a red dress and high heels. They both looked nervous, speaking in low voices with a young lawyer who didn't give me much confidence. When they saw us arrive, Rick looked at me with an expression I didn't know how to interpret. Was it guilt? Was it anger? Was it fear? Maybe it was all together. Lisa looked at me with contempt, as she had always done, but this time there was something different in her eyes. There was worry. We sat on opposite sides of the room, like two enemy families, although until a week ago we were the same family. Judge Harrison entered and the whole room stood up. He was an imposing man, almost 6'5", with a deep voice that filled the space. "Be seated," he ordered, and we all obeyed immediately. "We are here for the lawsuit of Mr. Frank Miller against his son Rick Miller and his daughter-in-law Lisa Miller for criminal trespass and unlawful eviction. Counselor, present your arguments." David stood up with that elegance given by years of study and the security of being right. "Your Honor, my client, Mr. Frank Miller, is the legitimate owner of the house located at 247 Maple Drive. Here are the original deeds, registered in his name since 1994. He handed the papers to the clerk, who passed them to the judge. Harrison reviewed them carefully, adjusting his glasses. "On February 15th of this year," David continued, "Mr. Miller was admitted to St. Joseph's Hospital on an emergency basis with severe pneumonia. During the 3 weeks he was hospitalized, in critical condition, his son Rick took advantage of the situation to change the locks of the house, move in with his wife, and remove all of Mr. Miller's personal belongings. When my client was discharged on March 8th, he found he couldn't enter his own house. His son and daughter-in-law denied him access and told him the house was now theirs and that he should go to a nursing home." Judge Harrison looked up from the papers and looked directly at Rick. "Is that true, son?" Rick stood up, nervous, looking at his lawyer as if asking for help. "Your Honor, we thought my dad wasn't going to survive. The doctors said it was likely he would die. We were paying rent and the house was empty." "Did the doctors give you permission to dispose of your father's property?" "No, Your Honor, but did your father give you permission?" "He couldn't. He was very serious." "That is not what I asked. Did they give you permission?" "No, Your Honor." Judge Harrison turned to the witnesses. Mrs. Higgins testified with a trembling but firm voice, recounting how she had seen Rick and Lisa take out Mr. Miller's things and put theirs in. Mr. Roberts confirmed he had seen the locks being changed. Mrs. Davis told how she had witnessed when Mr. Miller arrived from the hospital and they didn't let him in. When the testimonies ended, the judge gave the floor to Rick's lawyer. He was a young guy, fresh out of college, who stuttered throughout his intervention. "Your Honor, my client acted in good faith, thinking about his father's well-being. The house is too big for an older person, and they were willing to care for him in a more appropriate place." "In a nursing home?" interrupted the judge. "In a residence for seniors, Your Honor." "Without consulting him. My client thought it was for the best." "What your client thinks doesn't interest me," roared Judge Harrison. "What interests me is the law, and the law says nobody can dispose of another person's property without their consent, no matter the family relationship they have." The silence in the room was so deep you could hear everyone breathing. There is a particular kind of silence in a courtroom when shame finally catches up to arrogance. "Furthermore," continued the judge, I find it particularly repugnant that a son takes advantage of his father's illness to strip him of his estate. That speaks not only of a legal violation, but of a moral degradation that this court cannot tolerate. Rick was pale. Lisa had turned red, hands clenched in her lap. "The sentence of this court is the following," announced Judge Harrison with a solemn voice. "The defendants have 24 hours to vacate the property located at 247 Maple Drive and return all keys to the legitimate owner, Mr. Frank Miller. Furthermore, for the crime of criminal trespass and elder exploitation, and for the lack of respect shown towards a father, I sentence Rick Miller to 15 days in county jail." A murmur ran through the room. Lisa let out a choked scream. "15 days in jail?" asked Rick's lawyer. 15 days, confirmed the judge. "Let's see if that way he learns to respect his parents and the laws of this state. The defendants will also pay court costs and damages for emotional distress of $2,000. When we left the courthouse, David hugged me. "Uncle, we won everything." "Not only did you get your house back, but Rick is going to pay for what he did." But I didn't feel completely victorious. I had won legally, yes, but I had lost something more important. I had lost the illusion of having a son who respected me. Rick was arrested right there in the courthouse. The deputies took him away in handcuffs while Lisa cried and screamed it was an injustice. But justice isn't always what one wants to hear. That afternoon, the local papers published the news. "Son evicts sick father from his own home," said the headline of the Clearwater Gazette. "Judge sentences man to 15 days in jail for filial disrespect," reported the Tampa Bay Times. The next day, David called me to tell me something I didn't expect. "Uncle, did you hear about Lisa? What happened to Lisa?" "She got fired from the bank. Apparently, when the news came out in the papers, her bosses considered the scandal affected the company's image. A bank employee who participated in the dispossession of an elderly man didn't suit them. So Lisa had lost her job. The woman who had planned everything, who had convinced my son to take my house, was now paying the consequences. But you know what? If you're listening, I didn't feel satisfied with her punishment. I felt empty. Because when you're 76 and your own son betrays you that way, winning in court doesn't cure the pain of the soul. Justice had spoken, but my heart remained broken. The day after the trial, I arrived at my house accompanied by 2 sheriff's deputies and David. It was a sunny March morning, the kind that in Florida promises a hot day, but I had a heart cold as ice. I was going to recover my home, but the scars of what I had lived were still bleeding inside. Deputy Ramirez, a bulky man with a gray mustache, knocked on the door with that authority the law gives. "Sheriff's Department, we are here to execute a court order." We heard hurried steps inside, voices and whispers, the noise of things moving quickly. Lisa opened the door dressed in sweatpants and a wrinkled blouse, very different from the groomed woman I had seen in court. Her eyes were red, swollen from crying, but when she saw me standing behind the police, a flame of pure rage lit up in her gaze. "You," she muttered, and that word sounded like a curse. "Ma'am," Deputy Ramirez told her, showing the papers, "we have a judicial eviction order. You have 24 hours to evacuate the property." 24 hours? Lisa screamed. "How are we going to get everything out in 24 hours? We have furniture, clothes, appliances." "Ma'am, the order is clear. 24 hours. David approached and put his hand on my shoulder. "Uncle, do you want to go in and see how your house is?" I nodded and crossed the threshold of my home for the first time in 3 weeks. What I saw took my breath away, but not from joy, but from pain. My living room, where Martha and I had spent so many afternoons watching TV, where Rick had played with his toy cars as a child, was completely transformed. Lisa's furniture dominated the space. A black leather sofa that didn't match anything, a glass coffee table that looked like it came from a magazine, red curtains that made the room look cheap. "Where are my things?" I asked. Lisa pointed to the back of the house with contempt. "In the garage. We put your old junk there." That word, junk, pierced my chest like a knife. My photographs with Martha, the memories of a lifetime, the gifts Rick had given me when he still loved me, all that was junk to this woman. I walked to the garage, and there I found my life a mess. My books thrown in cardboard boxes, damp from the humidity. The photographs of my wedding with Martha scattered among rusty tools. My wardrobe, the same one I had bought when Rick was born, shoved against the wall like a useless piece of furniture. "Look how they treated your things, Martha," I whispered, picking up a photograph of us from the day Rick turned 10. It was stained with motor oil. The next few minutes I spent rescuing what I could from that mess, feeling how every recovered object returned a little piece of my identity. Deputy Ramirez helped me carry the boxes to the house, while Lisa started taking out her belongings with a fury that was scary. "All this is your fault, you old bastard," she screamed at me while carrying a lamp to the door. "Because of you, my husband is in jail." "Lisa," I told her with the calmest voice I could, "your husband is in jail because he tried to steal my house while I was dying in the hospital. He wasn't stealing anything. It was going to be his anyway." But it wasn't his yet, and I didn't die. Those words infuriated her even more. She took a dining chair and dragged it across the hardwood floor with such force she left a deep scratch from the living room to the door. "Lisa," David yelled at her. "What are you doing? Taking my furniture out of this goddamn house," she replied, and kept dragging everything she could instead of lifting it. The leather sofa left horrible marks on the floor. The glass table scratched the wood in the hallway. Even the appliances she pulled with viciousness, as if she wanted to take pieces of my house embedded in her belongings. "Ma'am, that can bring you more legal problems." "I don't give a damn," Lisa screamed. "Let him sue me. He already took my husband. He already cost me my job. He already ruined my life." But she kept scratching. She kept destroying, as if every mark on my floor was revenge against the justice that had fallen on her. The noise was unbearable, like nails on a chalkboard, but I couldn't do anything else but watch how this woman destroyed what little remained intact of my home. Mrs. Higgins appeared at the door with a pot of coffee and disposable cups. "Would you like some coffee?" she asked, trying to normalize the situation, but her voice trembled seeing the state of the floor. "Thank you, Mrs. Higgins," I told her. "You are always so kind." "Is Mr. Miller okay? You look very pale." "I'm fine. Just tired." But I wasn't fine. Seeing your sanctuary desecrated by rage hurts more than any physical blow. Each scratch on the floor was like a wound in my soul. Each dragged piece of furniture was a reminder that my family had disintegrated in the worst possible way. When Lisa finished taking her things out, my house looked like a battlefield. The hardwood floors Martha had chosen with such care were full of deep scratches. The walls had marks where the furniture had hit. Even the frame of the front door was splintered. "Done," announced Lisa, standing in the entrance with the keys in her hand. "There you have your precious house, old man. Hope you enjoy the little time you have left." She threw the keys at my feet and walked away toward a taxi that was waiting for her, loaded to the brim with her belongings. Deputy Ramirez picked up the keys from the floor and handed them to me. "Mr. Miller, I am very sorry about the damages. Are you going to file a report?" I looked at my ruined floor, my marked walls, my splintered door. All that could be repaired with money. But how do you repair the damage your own family does to you? "Yes," I told him finally. "I'm going to report the damages." David stayed with me that afternoon, helping me clean and put my things back in their place. While we swept the little pieces of wood left by Lisa's disaster, he told me the bank had already officially confirmed my daughter-in-law's firing. "Uncle, the news came out in all the local papers. Bank employee participates in dispossession against senior citizen. Her boss told her a person with those moral values couldn't represent the institution. And now what is she going to do?" "I don't know, Uncle, but that is not your problem. Your problem now is repairing your house and deciding what is going to happen with Rick when he gets out of jail." That night, alone in my recovered house, I sat in my old armchair, the same one where I had read the paper every morning for 15 years, and thought about my son. In 9 days, he would get out of jail, and we would have to face each other face to face. What was I going to say to him? How do you talk to a son who tried to bury you alive? The following days I spent cleaning, repairing, trying to return my house to how it was before the invasion. I hired Mr. Stevens, a carpenter from the neighborhood, to fix the scratched floors. He charged me $2,500 to sand and varnish all the damaged wood, money I would have to pay, even though the culprit was Lisa. "Mr. Miller," Mr. Stevens told me while working, "you're going to charge these damages to the lady who did this." "I hope so, Mr. Stevens." David took care of filing the lawsuit for the damages. With the photographs the police had taken and Deputy Ramirez's testimony, we had enough proof to demonstrate that Lisa had intentionally destroyed my property. The day Rick got out of jail, I was waiting for him on the porch of the house. I had gotten up early, showered carefully, put on a clean shirt. I wanted my son to see me as what I was, the owner of that house, his father, a man who had survived his betrayal. I saw him coming walking down Maple Drive from several blocks before he arrived. He walked slow, head down, carrying a plastic bag with his belongings. 15 days in the county jail had changed him. He was thinner, more haggard, and something in his posture told me he had had time to think. When he arrived at the porch, he stood at the foot of the steps, looking at me without knowing what to say. "Can I come up?" he asked me finally. "It's your decision," I replied. "It has always been your decision." He climbed the 3 steps slowly and sat in the other chair on the porch, the same one where Martha sat in the afternoons to watch people pass. "Dad," he started to say, but I stopped him. "Rick, before you speak, let me tell you something. For 15 days, I have been thinking about this moment, thinking about what I was going to say when you got out, if I was going to forgive you, if we could still be father and son after what happened." My son looked at me with eyes full of tears he was trying to hold back. "What you did to me," I continued, "wasn't just taking my house. It was burying me alive. It was deciding I didn't exist anymore, that I didn't matter anymore, that my years, my work, my love for you were worth nothing." "Dad, let me finish. When I was in that hospital bed, connected to machines, did you know what was the only thing giving me strength to fight? The idea of coming home. To my house. The house where you were born, where your mom died, where I built everything I have. And you took that away from me. You took away my will to live." Rick started crying openly, like I hadn't seen him since he was a child. "But here I am," I kept talking, "and here you are, and we have to decide what we are going to do now." "Dad, forgive me. You don't know how much I regret it. In jail, I did nothing but think about what I did to you, how I could be so blind, so selfish." "Why did you do it, Rick? Why did you betray me that way?" My son wiped his face with the back of his hand and looked me directly in the eyes for the first time in weeks. "Because I'm a coward, Dad. Because Lisa pressured me day and night that we were throwing money away on rent, that you were going to die, and we were going to inherit the house anyway. And why? Because I was afraid? Afraid of what? Afraid you would die, and I wouldn't know how to support my family. Afraid of not being man enough to get ahead on my own. Afraid of continuing to be the boy I always was with you, instead of growing up and taking responsibility for my life. Those words reached my heart in a way I didn't expect. For the first time, my son was speaking to me with honesty, without excuses, recognizing not only what he had done, but why he had done it. Rick, I told him, I'm going to be very clear with you. What you did almost killed me. Not the pneumonia, but the betrayal. Standing at the door of my own house, hearing you say it wasn't mine anymore was worse than any illness. I know, Dad, I know. But you are my son. You are the only thing I have left of Martha, the only thing I have left of the family we built. And I can't hate you forever. A long silence fell on the porch. We both looked toward the street, watching the neighborhood life pass by, listening to the familiar noises of the afternoon in Clearwater. I'm going to give you a chance, I told him finally. One single chance. But it's going to be on my terms. Whatever you say, Dad. First condition, you live here, in this house, but as my guest. Not as owner, not as heir, but as the son who is trying to recover his father's trust. I understand. Second condition, you work. I don't care at what, but you work every day and give me money for the house expenses. No freeloaders here. Yes, Dad. Third condition, you pay me the $2,500 it costs to repair the damages your wife made. It doesn't matter if it takes you a year, but you pay me. Rick nodded, although I could see that amount scared him. Fourth condition, I continued, and this is the most important one. Every day, for a full year, you are going to demonstrate to me that you deserve to call yourself my son. With your actions, not your words. With respect, with work, with care. As if you were a stranger who wants to earn my trust. And after the year? After the year, we'll see. If you have complied, if you have shown you really changed, then we can talk about being father and son for real. And if I don't comply? If you don't comply, you leave this house forever, and you don't come back. Ever. My son stayed silent a long moment, processing what he had just heard. Dad. And Lisa? What happens with Lisa? She wants us to get back together. She says all this was your fault, that you ruined our lives. Rick, that woman convinced you to steal my house while I was dying. Do you think that is the kind of person you need? I don't know, Dad. I'm very confused. I'm going to give you a piece of advice, and then you decide. A woman who pushes you to betray your father is capable of pushing you to betray anyone, including yourself. Rick stayed thinking about my words. Can I ask you something, Dad? Ask. Are you going to forgive me someday? I looked him in the eyes, this man of 40 who was still my little boy inside, this son I had been about to lose forever. Rick, forgiveness isn't something given. It's something earned. You decide if you want to earn it or not. Can I stay then? You can stay. But remember, only one chance. There won't be a second one. My son stood up and headed toward the door of the house. Before entering, he turned to me. Dad, thanks. I promise I won't fail you again. We Millers don't make promises, Rick. We deliver. That night, for the first time in a month, my son and I had dinner together at the kitchen table. We didn't talk much, but something had changed. The war was over. Now the reconstruction began. And I, Frank Miller, at 76 years old, had realized that sometimes you have to lose a son to be able to recover him for real. The first days were like walking on thin ice. Rick got up before dawn, made coffee without me asking him, and went out to look for work as if his life depended on it. And maybe it did depend on it. He had lost his job at the auto shop when he was arrested, and now he had to start from zero, with the record of having been in jail for stealing his father's house. "Dad," he told me one morning while we ate breakfast in silence, "I found work in construction with Mr. Morales. It's temporary, but it pays well." "How much?" I asked him directly. There was no time for beating around the bush. $150 a day when there is work. It's not every day, but it's something." $150. In my time, a whole family lived on that for a week. But times had changed, and my son had to adapt to the reality of starting from the bottom. "That's fine," I told him. "But remember, from every dollar you earn, a part is for house expenses and another to pay the floor damages." "Yes, Dad, I already calculated it. I can give you $100 daily when I work." $100 daily. It was going to take 25 days of work to pay me the $2,500. If he worked 5 days a week, it would be a little over a month, but it was a start. Rick kept his word. Every day he had work, he arrived in the afternoon, tired, dirty, hands full of calluses, and handed me the $100 without me asking. He put them on the kitchen table next to my dinner plate, like a silent offering. But the money wasn't the most important thing. What mattered to me was seeing him change day by day, seeing how hard work was molding not only his body, but his character. There was something different in his eyes, something I hadn't seen since he was young. One afternoon, he arrived earlier than usual. I heard him in the shower, then saw him come out of the bathroom and head toward the kitchen. When I arrived, he was making dinner. "What are you doing?" I asked him. "I thought I could cook today. I bought beef at the market, made pot roast like Mom taught me." It had been years since I saw my son cook. Since he married Lisa, she took care of everything in the house, and he had gotten used to being served. But there he was, stirring the gravy in the pot with the same concentration Martha put when she prepared food for the family. "Do you remember how your mom did it?" I asked him. "I remember some things. Slow cooking with onions and carrots, the rosemary, the salt at the end. Hope it turns out similar." We ate that pot roast that tasted like memories. It wasn't the same as Martha's, but there was love in every bite. There was effort. There was a desire to do things right. And that shows in the food, just as it shows in everything. "It turned out good," I told him, and I saw his face light up like when he was a kid, and I congratulated him for something. But life wasn't going to be easy for Rick. A week after that dinner, Lisa appeared at the house. She arrived in the afternoon when my son had just returned from work. I was on the porch reading the paper when I saw her coming walking down the street, dressed in tight jeans and a low-cut blouse, as if she were going to a party instead of facing the problems she had helped create. "Rick!" she screamed from the sidewalk. "Come out here, we have to talk!" My son came out of the house wiping his hands with a towel. He had been washing the dinner dishes, another thing he had never done when living with her. "Hi, Lisa," he told her, but didn't go down from the porch. "Hi, nothing. Aren't you going to hug me? I'm your wife." "Lisa, it's been 3 weeks since I got out of jail and you haven't come to see me a single time." "Because I was mad. Because of you, I lost my job. Because of you, I'm living with my sister in a borrowed room. Because of you, my life was ruined." I heard those words from my chair and felt rage rising in my throat. This woman still didn't understand that it had been her who had planned everything, who had convinced my son to steal my house, who had scratched my floors out of spite. "Lisa," he told her, "I didn't have any fault. I just wanted us to have a better house, not pay rent like fools while your dad had that empty house." "It wasn't empty. It was his house." "It was his house that was going to be yours when he died." "But he didn't die, Lisa. And even if he had died, what we did was wrong." I saw how my daughter-in-law was getting more and more furious with every word from Rick. She wasn't used to him contradicting her, much less in public in front of me. "Rick, get down from there and let's talk like people. I already got a job at a store. We can rent a small apartment, start over." "I can't, Lisa." "What do you mean you can't? I'm your wife." "I'm paying a debt. I owe money to my dad for the damages you did when you took your things out." "What damages or what nothing? They were my furniture. I had the right to take them out." David had made sure Lisa received the lawsuit for property damage, but apparently she was pretending she didn't understand the gravity of the situation. "Lisa," Rick told her with a firmness I hadn't heard before, "you scratched all the hardwood floor on purpose. That cost $2,500 to fix." $2,500 for some scratches? Your dad is robbing you. There I couldn't stay quiet. I got up from my chair and approached the edge of the porch. "Lisa," I told her with a calm but firm voice, "I have the photographs the police took. I have the testimony of the deputy who was present, and I have the invoice from the carpenter. If you want, we can go back to court so a judge decides if $2,500 is a lot or a little for the damage you did." Lisa's face turned red as a tomato. "You don't interfere. This is between my husband and me." "Your husband lives in my house, eats my food, and owes me money. That gives me the right to interfere." Lisa turned to Rick with eyes full of tears of rage. "Are you going to let your dad talk to me like that?" "My dad is right, Lisa. What you did was wrong." "I can't believe what I'm hearing. You are an ungrateful man. I helped you get that house." "You helped me steal it from my sick dad." "It was for us, for our future." "Our future can't be built on betraying my family." Those words were like a slap for Lisa. She stayed quiet a moment, looking at my son as if he were a stranger. "You know what, Rick?" she told him finally. "I don't recognize you. The man I married wasn't this suck-up who was afraid of his dad." "The man you married was a coward," replied Rick. "I'm trying to be something better." "Something better? You are a failure." "You are living with your dad like a mama's boy, working in construction like a laborer, without ambitions, without future." "I'm paying my debts. I'm trying to recover the dignity I lost." "Dignity? What good is dignity if you don't even have a place to drop dead?" Lisa turned around and started walking toward the street, but turned back to say one last thing. "When you get tired of living like your dad's freeloader, you know where to find me. But don't look for me too late, because I'm not going to wait for you all my life." "Lisa!" shouted Rick. "Where are you going?" "To look for a real man. Someone who doesn't let himself be bossed around by his family." And she went walking down Maple Drive with that fury only women have when they feel they are losing control over their men. Rick stayed standing on the porch, watching her walk away, and I could see in his face that something was breaking inside. "Are you okay?" I asked him. "I don't know, Dad. I think so, but I don't know." "Rick, that woman is giving you a choice between her and doing the right thing. I know." "What are you going to choose?" My son sat on the porch steps and put his head between his hands. "Dad, I loved Lisa. Or I thought I loved her. But these days, living here with you, working, trying to be a better person, I realized the woman I loved doesn't exist. The woman I loved wouldn't have convinced me to steal your house. And so? So I think it's better she leaves." If she can't understand why I have to repair the damage we did, if she can't support me while I try to recover your trust, then she isn't the woman for me. Those words filled me with a pride I hadn't felt for my son in years. Finally, he was maturing. Finally, he was understanding what it meant to be a real man. Rick, I told him, taking that decision wasn't easy. No, Dad. But it was the right one. 2 weeks later, David brought me some papers to sign. Uncle, Lisa filed for divorce. She says Rick abandoned her. Rick abandoned her? According to her, yes. She says he chose to live with you instead of fulfilling his husbandly duties. I laughed despite everything. David, after all that has happened, do you think that is going to cause Rick problems? Not at all, Uncle. After the house theft scandal, any judge is going to sympathize more with Rick than with her. Besides, she was the one who left, not him. The divorce was resolved quickly. Lisa didn't ask for alimony, didn't ask for anything. She just wanted to get rid of my loser son as soon as possible. She signed the papers without even appearing in court, and that's how that chapter of our lives ended. Rick kept working in construction during the day, and in the evenings he started working part-time at a warehouse. 2 jobs to be able to pay me faster and to save some money for his future. I saw him arrive at 9 at night, tired to the bone, but he always gave me my money and always asked if I needed anything. On weekends, we repaired things around the house together, fixed the bathroom plumbing, painted the siding, pruned the garden. Working side by side without talking much, but feeling how little by little something more than the house was being repaired. The relationship between us was being repaired. One afternoon, while we were fixing the front gate, Mrs. Higgins approached to chat. Mr. Miller, how is everything going with Rick? It's going well, Mrs. Higgins, getting better. He looks different, more serious, more responsible. Hard knocks make hard men, I told her. And have you forgiven him? I stayed thinking about that question while tightening a screw on the gate. Mrs. Higgins, forgiveness is like this gate. It doesn't get fixed overnight. You have to tighten every screw, file every rusted part, paint it with care. But when it's done right, it lasts many years. That is very beautiful, Mr. Miller. Rick heard the conversation, but said nothing. He just kept working, but I could see a small smile on his face. 4 months later, my son handed me the last $100 bill. Done, Dad. $2,500 complete. Did you count it? 3 times. I took the money and put it in the kitchen drawer, where I had been gathering every payment. Rick, you kept your word. It was the least I could do. It wasn't the least, it was the right thing. There is a difference. That night, I prepared a special dinner. I made pot roast, Rick's favorite dish since he was a kid, the same one Martha prepared on birthdays. My son realized immediately. Dad, is that real pot roast? Like your mom used to make. Why? Is it my birthday and I forgot? It's the birthday of the son I recovered. We ate that roast in silence, savoring not only the food but the moment. It was the first special dinner we shared since before my illness, since before the betrayal, since before everything came crashing down. Dad, he told me while we were clearing the plates, do you not hate me anymore? Rick, I never hated you. I hated what you did, but you never. Do you forgive me then? I am forgiving you. Every day I forgive you a little bit more. When will it be complete? When you forgive yourself. 1 week later, Mr. Roberts from the neighborhood stopped me in the street. Mr. Miller, is it true you changed the locks again? Yes, Mr. Roberts, I put new locks in. Why? Don't you trust Rick? I trust the man he is becoming, but complete trust is earned with time. Are you going to give him keys? I already gave him one key, but I keep the spare key. For now. And if he behaves well? If he behaves well, someday he will have all the keys. But that will be when I decide, not when he asks. Mr. Roberts nodded with that wisdom years give. Well done, Mr. Miller. Sons need to learn that respect isn't inherited, it is earned. That afternoon, I told Rick about my conversation with Mr. Roberts. Seriously, you aren't going to give me the spare key? He asked me. Not for now. Why? Because the spare key is for emergencies, and I need to be sure your concept of emergency is the same as mine. My son laughed, but understood the message. Dad, how much longer is this going to last? What thing? This test. This demonstration that I deserve to be your son. Until we are both sure it is no longer a test. Until being a good son is something natural in you, not something you do because I asked you. It's a strange thing, parenting a grown man. You have to break the bone to set it right again. Now, 6 months after everything started, I see my son get up every morning with the desire to work, to build something better with his hands and his life. I see him take care of me when I'm tired, worry about my health, ask me about my day. I see him becoming the man I always wanted him to be. Have I forgiven him completely? Almost. Do I trust him like before? Not yet. But we are on the right path, and that is what matters. Last night, while we were having dinner, he told me something that reached my heart. Dad, thanks for not letting me go. Thanks for giving me the chance to be better. Thanks for taking it, I replied. Because in the end, if you're listening, that is what real family is about. Not the blood we share, but the decisions we make every day to care for each other, respect each other, and earn the love we have for one another. My son is learning that, day by day. And I am learning to trust again, day by day. The new keys work perfectly, and someday, when I am sure he won't use them to hurt me again, I will give Rick the spare one. But that day hasn't arrived yet, and that's okay. Because respect, as Martha used to say, isn't a gift, it's a conquest. Disclaimer: this story is a work of fiction, but the emotions within it are as real as the foundations of any home. We often think of family as an unbreakable bond, but even the strongest steel can rust if not cared for. Boundaries are not walls to keep people out, but gates to protect what is precious within. And sometimes, the most loving thing a parent can do is let their child fall so they can finally learn how to stand.